On April 28th, Abdu'l-Baha left by train for Chicago. Like many other cities, Chicago was bitterly divided over racial issues. At Hull House, a settlement house for immigrants founded by Jane Addams, vice president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association and chairman of the Women's Peace Party, Abdu'l-Baha addressed the issue of color to an overflow audience.
Shall this, the least of all distinctions, separate you as races and individuals? The various races of humankind lend a composite harmony and beauty of color to the whole. Let all associate, therefore, in this great human garden, even as flowers grow and blend together side by side.
After Abdu'l-Baha's address, many immigrant children and unemployed men gathered around, and to each he gave some coins. From Hull House, he went to the 4th Annual Convention of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which earlier had been discussing lynchings and job discrimination. He asked the gathering,
"Can we say that man of a certain hue, white, black, brown, yellow, red, is the true image of his creator? We must conclude that color is of no importance. Man is not man simply because of bodily attributes. The standard of divine measure is his intelligence and spirit."
W.E.B. Du Bois, editor of the NAACP journal The Crisis, and one of the most influential African Americans in the country, published an account that noted,
1,000 disappointed people were unable to get in the hall to experience the calm, sweet universalism of Abdu'l-Baha.
Du Bois featured Abdu'l-Baha as Man of the Month in his journal, and a digest of Abdu'l-Baha's Hull House and NAACP talks. Race unity continued as a theme throughout Abdu'l-Baha's journey, and his talks attracted numerous African Americans to the Baha'i faith. Among them were Elaine Locke, a preeminent black scholar and a founder of the Harlem Renaissance; Ida B. Wells, a leading activist in Chicago; and Robert Abbott, publisher of the Chicago Defender. Abdu'l-Baha also stressed gender equality in Chicago. He spoke to the Federation of Women's Clubs at the Hotel La Salle. One woman had been at the heart of the acquisition of the temple grounds. In 1907, Corinne True took to the Holy Land, for Abdu'l-Baha's approval, a petition bearing signatures of Baha'is in America wishing to build a temple. He stunned the all-male Chicago Baha'i Governing Council when he directed them to confer with Corinne about his instructions for the temple, and specified that women should be on the temple committee. Corinne had suffered many difficulties, including the deaths of her husband, 3 sons, and a daughter. When Abdu'l-Baha arrived in Chicago, her only surviving son, Davis, was critically ill. Abdu'l-Baha went to the True home to see Davis, who died later that day. Despite her grief, Corinne went to the temple site the next day. On May 1st, a blustery day in Wilmette, Abdu'l-Baha dedicated the grounds for the first Western Baha'i house of worship. 300 people filled the seats and another 200 stood on the outside edge. Abdu'l-Baha walked the grounds before entering. The prepared program cast aside, he addressed the eager listeners.
Thousands of Masriq al-Askars, dawning points of praise of God for all, will be built in the east and in the west, but this, being the first one erected in the Occident, has great importance.
Years earlier, a poor seamstress, Nettie Tobin, had procured a rejected construction site stone. A newsboy helped her drag it onto the temple property. Upon seeing it among the weeds, Abdu'l-Baha declared that it represented the sacrifice of the believers and sent some boys to recover it. Shovels were borrowed from a nearby construction site. Then Corinne True suggested,
"Perhaps a woman should be allowed to turn a shovel of earth on this momentous day."
Lua Getzinger, an eloquent teacher of the Baha'i faith, was called forward by Abdu'l-Baha to take a turn. the oneness of humanity was displayed when several women from east and west turned the sod in preparation for the stone. Abdu'l-Baha presented handfuls of earth to various people as souvenirs. On behalf of all people, he rolled the stone into the hole, pushed dirt around it with the trowel, and pounded it down with the shovel. As he put the spade into the earth, he declared,
"The temple is already built."
The dedication ceremony proved to be one of the signal events of Abdu'l-Baha's ministry and a defining moment in the creation of a unified Baha'i community beginning to emerge in North America. Since 1933, when the first tours of the site were offered, the Baha'i temple and its grounds have been open to all for worship and reflection. The gardens and building continue to be embellished and beautified. The day after the temple dedication, the True family held a funeral for Corinne's son, Davis. Later, Abdu'l-Baha went to the cemetery and prayed for Davis and for all the people buried there. At Northwestern University, Abdu'l-Baha spoke to the Theosophists at University Hall on eternal life and death as merely a transformation. On May 5th, he spoke at the Plymouth Congregational Church. After Reverend Joseph Milburn introduced him, the audience stood and burst into cheers that stopped only when he motioned them to silence. That evening, he spoke at the All Souls Church, held at the Abraham Lincoln Center. Mahmoud noted that people surrounded him like moths. Abdu'l-Baha spent time walking and meeting people in Lincoln Park, directly across from his hotel. He went to the park's zoo, as he'd never been to a large zoo. And he was happy to see the various animals. One day, he was with a group under a grove of trees near the park's lake, and he said,
Some of you may have observed that I have not called attention to any of your individual shortcomings. I would suggest to you that if you shall be similarly considerate in your treatment of each other, it will be greatly conducive to the harmony of your association with each other.
Abdu'l-Baha met with 35 children and their parents at the Plaza Hotel. After hearing them sing, he called the children to him individually, asking for their names. Afterwards, Abdu'l-Baha gave each child an envelope full of rose petals and invited them all to Lincoln Park for a photograph. He then asked for time alone and walked over to a statue of Abraham Lincoln, at which he gazed for a while. In Chicago, he revealed a special prayer for America.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to Thee. These hearts are radiant with Thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of Thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world, O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal.